This is a story called Berry Juice, and this is part one. In midsummer 2017, following the sudden heart attack that had claimed his father Colin, Ollie returned to Fife. Having also lost his mum Flora when he was 18, Ollie now found himself the sole owner of the cottage in Anstruther that had been his childhood home. The house, known by the locals for its habit of blushing coyly from pale salmon to deep rose in the final throes of the East Coast sunrise, was equally susceptible to the ripping harbour front winds which, having whistled teasingly through its roof for many years, now threatened to compromise its entire structure from the top down. And so Ollie had given up his rental agreement in Edinburgh and returned to the cottage to oversee the repair work put in place by Colin before his death. For the 3 years since graduating university, Ollie had held down a steady, well-salaried job as an assistant economist for the Scottish Government. His office was close to the Parliament buildings in Holyrood, and his new 2-hour commute in Colin's old golf lent Ollie a belated appreciation of the ambling, strawberry Danish-flavoured mornings of the past. At work, he found himself tuning out of meetings, preferring to focus solely on the bland, systematic logic of his projection spreadsheets. On the journey home, he did his best to reproduce the rows of spindly black calculations in his mind, but they tended to wriggle and fade as the A9 slipped seamlessly into the rapeseed fields and lavender-tipped grasses of Fife, where Ollie's return was often heralded by the emergence of a low-slung summer moon. Colin's golf had remained remarkably intact since Ollie's childhood, aside from a stubbornly monogamous commitment to Radio 2, which had never caused much perturbance to his parents. As the mellow tones of Ronan Keating and Gabrielle drifted from the speakers, Ollie drove the same winding country roads he had once looked out upon as a child in the back seat, ferried by his mother to school in St Andrews, and later fraught and anxious in the passenger seat beside his father on their way to the Dundee hospice where she had spent her last months. Occasionally, little moments of exchange would return to Ollie, the memory induced by the very songs that had accompanied those journeys of the past. Whenever this happened, Ollie switched off the radio and breathed low and steady, his heart racing as though constricted by the density of his solitude. In the evenings, Ollie had taken to trundling the golf into the small space by the cottage and making his way across the street to the Harbour Tavern. All of Ollie's former school friends had long since left the area, but he'd always liked Dougie, the pub's owner. Dougie was a free spirit, gravel-voiced and ruddy-cheeked from time spent outdoors playing guitar on the beach or tending to the wildflower patch next to the village graveyard. His pub was a comforting, old-fashioned affair with low ceilings and creamy, fat candles gnarled with dried wax, its thick stone walls hung with relics he had acquired on his travels, a faded Cuban flag, a football he'd brought home from playing street games in Chile. One Thursday evening in July, Ollie pushed open the pub's heavy wooden doors and was greeted as usual by a beaming Dougie. "The man himself? Ollie, come on over and meet Anya." The pub was quiet and Ollie had a clear view of the young woman perched on a stool at the bar. She looked around Ollie's age and was wearing a boxy, faded blue linen dress and a bright coral shell necklace. Her dusty blonde hair was tied into a complicated pleat, and her serene elfin face opened into a smile as she met Ollie's surprised gaze. "Wow, serious briefcase, man," she said impishly, with a swift glance at the work bag Ollie set down on the stool beside her. She spoke with an Eastern European lilt, Czech or Ukrainian maybe, but with a refined, crisp precision that made Ollie think she could just as easily hail from down south and had just lived overseas for a while. He knew she was ribbing him with the briefcase line, but she did so with such twinkly grace that he immediately felt his own lips curving upwards in response. "Yeah, needs must, I'm afraid. Hello, Dougie. Nice to see you. Right, just the usual, and then I'll get out your way." He nodded to the paper pad laid out on the bar in front of Anya. Its open pages were covered with scribbled notes surrounded by pretty doodles of what looked to Ollie like bright scarlet rimless planets. At Ollie's words, Anya slid her pen behind her ear, closed the book, and put it into the slouchy cotton bag at her feet. Not at all. What is it they say? School is out for the night? She grinned, indicating her pint glass. As Ollie watched her face, he saw that her skin, otherwise pale, was flushed a dark red across the top of her nose and her cheeks, as though she had been burnt slightly in the sun. There you are, city boy, said Dougie. Someone your age for once, sit down and come and speak to us. Ollie, sensing that Dougie had already allowed himself a swift dram or two behind the bar, as was his custom of a balmy evening, glanced at Anya to check her position on this proposal. Of course, she said quickly. Come and join us. Well, all right, said Ollie. Hello, yes, hello, nice to meet you. Yes, I'm Ollie. He slid his briefcase onto the stool and sat down as Anya reached to shake his hand. When she moved, her scent pulled into the space around them. It was fresh and sparklingly green, as though she'd spent the day running through fields of flowers.